AITA for refusing to pay my ex-girlfriend's debts after she left me for her ex? For 3 years, I carried a relationship on my shoulders. I believed it was love, but in reality, I was just a backup plan. When I discovered the betrayal, I thought nothing could be worse, until she and her new boyfriend had the audacity to come to me with a request that bordered on the absurd. That's when everything went off the rails. If you like stories like this and want to show your support, please hit the like button. My name is Grayson, I'm 29 years old, and I currently own a popular burger joint. It's not a fancy place or anything like that, but I'm proud of what I've built. I started from the bottom, working long hours in other people's kitchens, saving every penny. After a lot of sacrifice, I managed to open my own business. Over time, the restaurant began to grow. I built a loyal customer base and, in a way, became a local favorite. I can say I make a living from my passion. Thanks to this, I was able to buy a car through my hard work. I also managed to get my own house. It's not a mansion, but it's comfortable, cozy, and enough for me. I've never been a lavish person, just a hard worker who feels satisfied when he sees his goals achieved through consistency and discipline. It was in this context, when everything was taking off, that I met Elena. She was 25 at the time, and I wasn't in a phase where I was looking for a serious relationship, but life surprised me. I remember perfectly the first day she walked into my restaurant. It was a Friday afternoon, one of those days when the line was out the door. I was at the cash register helping out because we were short-staffed when she appeared. She ordered her meal with a shy smile, but there was something in her eyes that caught my attention. She asked me if the place belonged to me. When I said yes, she was surprised. She congratulated me on the business, and we ended up chatting for a bit. It wasn't long before we started going out. In the beginning, everything was new, exciting, those butterflies in your stomach that make every sacrifice worthwhile. Elena was affectionate, caring, and always made me feel special. We gradually made our relationship official, and after a few months, we were already a couple. However, with time, I started to notice she had a very particular temperament. She was jealous and emotionally unstable. If she saw me talking to a female customer, even if it was just to take her order, she would get upset. If someone left a positive comment on my business's social media page, she wanted to know who it was and why that person was interacting with me. At first, I interpreted this as a sign of interest, as if her jealousy reflected how much she cared about our relationship. I was blinded by love, and, instead of setting boundaries, I decided to put up with it. Over time, these behaviors became more frequent. Sometimes, we would argue over insignificant things. She could be fine one moment, and suddenly get angry for no apparent reason. There were days she would tell me I was her everything, and others when she seemed to doubt everything we had. I justified these mood swings by telling myself they were perhaps insecurities or difficult past experiences. My mistake was believing that love would be enough to solve everything. The truth is, I was in love. I believed our relationship had a future, that we could overcome any obstacle. I thought about marrying her one day, starting a family. I always included her in my plans and was convinced she felt the same way. But everything changed a few months ago. I noticed Elena was different. She was more distant, distracted, as if her mind was somewhere else. When I asked her if there was a problem, she'd say she was tired from work or worried about personal matters. I tried not to pressure her, but her coldness started to affect me. The arguments became more frequent, and awkward silences began to be a part of our daily life. I'm not a suspicious person by nature, but something inside me started to have doubts. I couldn't explain why, but I had a feeling she was hiding something from me. One day, while she was in the bathroom, her phone buzzed on the coffee table. I'm not the type to snoop through other people's things, but the screen lit up and a notification appeared from an unsaved number. The message said something like, "See you tomorrow. I can't stop thinking about you." I felt a punch to the gut. My first reaction was to think it might be a mistake, a friend's joke, but my intuition told me otherwise. I didn't say anything at that moment. I kept quiet and waited to see if she would tell me about it herself. The next day, I woke up earlier than usual. I decided to follow her without her noticing. I'm not proud of it, but I needed answers. She said she was going to visit a friend from college, but instead, I saw her pull into the parking lot of a coffee shop. I parked my car some distance away and just watched. A few minutes later, a man arrived. I didn't recognize him immediately, but then it hit me. It was her ex-boyfriend. They greeted each other with an overt intimacy, hugged, and started talking as if they were a couple. In that instant, I felt my whole world collapsing. I was still hoping I was wrong, but the scene before my eyes confirmed what I feared most. Elena was cheating on me. I didn't approach them. I didn't make a scene. I just stood there, watching in silence, overcome with a mix of anger, sadness, and disappointment. After a few minutes, I drove away because I didn't have the strength to stay or to confront her right then. That night, when she came home, I decided to talk to her. I sat down across from Elena and told her straight up that I knew what was going on. At first, she tried to deny it, but when she saw I was sure, she looked down. What she told me next destroyed me even more. With tears in her eyes, she confessed that yes, she had been seeing her ex. And not only that, she said he was the true love of her life, that even though she cared for me, she had never stopped loving him. Hearing those words was like being stabbed straight through the heart. Until that day, I believed our relationship had a future, that we could work through our problems. But suddenly, I was faced with a reality I couldn't change. I had been just a substitute, a kind of temporary refuge while she remained emotionally attached to someone else. I didn't know what to say in that moment. I just stared at her in silence, trying to hold back my tears. She asked me to understand, said she hadn't planned it, that she had simply reconnected with feelings she had never truly left behind. I was devastated. Everything we had built over 3 years was crumbling in the cruelest way possible. It was then that I understood something painful but necessary. Love isn't enough when there is no honesty or respect. But what came next was even worse. To give some context, in our relationship, I was always the one who covered the major expenses. I never regretted being generous because it was my way of showing affection. But over time, I noticed that Elena had gotten used to depending on me for absolutely everything. I paid our rent, the little trips we took from time to time, and even some debts she had from before we were together. One of those debts was the loan for the car she drove. When we started dating, she told me she had bought the vehicle on credit but was struggling to make the payments. At that time, my restaurant was already doing well, and I thought, no problem, I can help her. I started taking over the monthly payments. In my mind, it was just a gesture of support, an act of love. I never imagined it would later be used against me. A few weeks after the breakup, I was at the restaurant checking the accounts when my phone rang. I saw it was her. I hesitated to answer, but figured it might be to sort out some pending issue or to pick up the last of her things. I answered with a dry tone, not wanting to prolong the conversation. "Hi, Grayson," she said as if nothing had happened. "What do you want, Elena?" I replied, "I'm just calling to let you know they told me you haven't paid the car payment yet. You need to do it soon, or the interest will pile up." I was silent for a few seconds, in disbelief. "Is this a joke?" I said, laughing nervously. "No, I'm serious. You know you've always been the one to pay that bill." That's when my blood boiled. "Listen to me very carefully, Elena. You and I are nothing anymore. You lied and you cheated on me. You had the nerve to tell me your ex was the love of your life. I have absolutely no obligation to keep paying your debts. That car is yours, not mine. Figure it out yourself." An awkward silence followed, and then I hung up. I thought that would be the end of it, but I was wrong. In the following days, she started harassing me with calls and messages. She said I needed to act like a man and couldn't back out of a commitment I had already made. I would block her, but she always found a way to contact me from other numbers. I ignored it as much as I could until the situation became even more absurd. Her ex, Julian, the same guy she had cheated on me with, started calling me too. The first time I saw the unknown number, I didn't answer. But he was so persistent that I finally picked up just to get it over with. "Hello," I said. "Grayson," a mature-sounding voice asked. "Yes. Who is this?" "Julian, Elena's boyfriend." I couldn't believe my ears. This leech, who still lived with his parents and had never done anything for her, now had the audacity to call me. "And what the hell do you want?" I retorted. "Look, I don't want any trouble. I just want you to understand that the right thing to do is to keep helping Elena. She gave you 3 years of her life, 3 years of her youth that she'll never get back. The least you can do is compensate her." I was stunned. "Excuse me?" I replied, incredulous. "Yes, you heard me. She deserves for you to pay at least a year of rent and the overdue car payments. For you, it's nothing. You have a restaurant that makes good money." At that moment, I exploded. "Listen to me, you idiot. For those 3 years, I gave Elena absolutely everything. Stability, support, a roof over her head, and I even paid her debts. Don't you dare tell me I owe her anything, because the reality is, she owes me. She's the one who cheated. I'm not giving another cent. He tried to interrupt, but I wouldn't let him. You know what your problem is, Julian? You're a freeloader, a leech who still depends on his parents and has never accomplished anything on his own. You have the nerve to demand that I keep supporting Elena when you, the great love of her life, can't even buy her a cup of coffee. Why don't you take care of her car and her rent? A heavy silence followed. I was furious. Learn to earn things with your own sweat. You bunch of leeches. I yelled before hanging up. That was the end of the call, but not the harassment. Elena started insisting again in the following days. She sent messages like, Grayson, be reasonable. Don't leave me alone in this situation. Or if you ever really loved me, keep your word and pay what's left. But I was already convinced it was time to draw a definitive line. It wasn't just about money. It was about respect. I had given too much in that relationship. I had provided opportunities she would never have had on her own, and instead of appreciating them, she cheated on me with someone who was clearly not on her level in any way. And the worst part, instead of feeling ashamed, she still wanted me to be her savior while she shared a bed with that guy. This situation opened my eyes in a brutal way. I realized that sometimes people don't just take advantage of your love, but also your generosity. And when you don't set a limit, you end up turning into some kind of emotional and financial ATM. With every message I received, with every attempt at manipulation, my resolve only grew stronger. I wasn't going to pay for anything else. The car was her problem. The rent was her problem. And her new life with the love of her life was also her problem. I'm not perfect, but I know that everything I've achieved in my life, I've earned through my own effort. No one ever gave me anything for free, let alone paid my debts. If she wanted to be with her ex, fine, but she had to take responsibility for herself too. So, I decided to cut all contact. I blocked her on all social networks, including the unknown numbers. I also told my employees at the restaurant not to let her in if she ever showed up. Not because I wanted to humiliate her, but because I needed to protect my peace of mind and the business I had built with so much sacrifice. The first few days were tough, I won't lie. I was angry, sad, and at the same time, empty. I had invested years of my life in someone who, in the end, only used me. But with time, I started to see things more clearly, and even though it still hurts, I know I made the right decision. To never again put a single cent into the life of someone who betrayed me and didn't even have the decency to leave with dignity. Update. After everything that had happened, I thought I had finally turned the page. I had blocked Elena everywhere, set a clear boundary, and decided to focus on my life. I believed that would be enough, but I was wrong. A few quiet weeks went by until one day, my phone rang with an unknown number. I hesitated to answer, but, out of habit, I picked up. To my great surprise, it was Elena. Grayson, please, don't hang up, she said, sobbing. Right from the start, I was already tired of it. What do you want now? I replied coldly. At least help me with the car. I don't want the loan to default. If we don't pay this month, they'll charge me late fees and I can't handle it. I just need you to give me some money. I was silent for a few seconds. I was disgusted by her nerve to ask me for money again after everything that had happened. Elena, I already told you, that car is yours, not mine. It's your responsibility. I'm not paying for anything. She burst into tears. Grayson, understand me. I promised Julian you would cover everything. I told him not to worry because you've always been there. I assured him we wouldn't lack anything because you have money, because you're rich. Hearing that, I seethed with anger. Rich? I replied, almost laughing sarcastically. Do you think just because I own a restaurant, I'm a millionaire? Do you know how many hours I work a day to keep it going? I'm not rich, Elena. What I have, I've earned with my own sweat, not with empty promises. If you really want to get out of debt, get a job. At that moment, I heard a strange noise. Suddenly, another voice took the phone. Listen to me. It was Julian, in a threatening tone. If you don't want something to happen to your little burger joint, you'd better cooperate. A chill ran down my spine, but I quickly became enraged. Are you threatening me, you leech? Listen to me carefully. If you touch my restaurant, you'll go straight to jail. I'm not afraid of you or anyone else. You want money? Get a job like everyone else, because you won't get a single cent from me. And I hung up on him. A few minutes later, my phone rang again, but I didn't answer. Then, I received a voice message from Elena. "Please, Grayson," she said, crying. "Help me. I can't handle this alone. It's too much money. And if you don't give me anything, Julian is going to leave me, and I'll be left with no one to help me." I couldn't help but laugh ironically. She was admitting, without realizing it, that her biggest fear was being abandoned by this guy, and that her whole plan was nothing more than to live off someone, whether it was me or him. I decided to respond in the same tone. I opened my photo gallery, found an old video I had saved, the famous meme of Mr. Krabs playing the world's smallest violin, and sent it to her with this message. "Here's the official anthem for your situation. Good luck with your great love and your debts." After sending it, I felt relieved, as if I had finally found the closure I needed. But deep down, I knew I couldn't just leave it at irony. Julian had made a direct threat against my business, and that was no longer a joke. The next day, I went to see my lawyer. I told him everything. The calls, the voice messages, the explicit threat. I showed him the call logs, the screenshots, and Elena's tearful audio message. My lawyer was clear. What they were doing was extortion, and I could report them to the police. Furthermore, the threats against my business were very serious. I didn't hesitate for a second. I filed an official police report, and my lawyer helped me file for an order of protection. At the same time, I hired a private security firm for the restaurant. I installed more cameras, reinforced the locks on the entrances, and explained the situation to my employees so they would be vigilant. I wasn't going to take any chances, not for myself, nor for the people who work with me. The most ironic thing is that while I was doing everything to protect what I had built with so much effort, they were probably still thinking about how to get money from me. I'm sure of it, because a few days later, I received a message from another unknown number. It was an absurd blackmail attempt, clearly written by Julian. "There's still time to do the right thing and help Elena. If you don't, you'll face the consequences." It was the final piece of evidence I handed over to my lawyer. With every attempt at manipulation, they were only digging a deeper hole for themselves. On a personal level, I won't lie, all of this affected me. It's not easy to accept that the person you trusted was not only capable of cheating on you, but also of trying to take advantage of you even after the relationship ended. What struck me the most wasn't the betrayal itself, even though it hurts, but this mentality of dependency and abuse. The mere fact that someone believes they deserve to have another person pay their debts just because they spent time together is something I still can't wrap my head around. As for Julian, he only confirmed what I already knew. A man with no ambition, no job, no dignity, willing to live off of anyone. I felt anger, yes, but also pity. How can someone feel comfortable asking another man for money to support his own partner? It's the height of mediocrity. Today, I can say I'm no longer afraid. I am legally protected and have enhanced security. If they try anything, they will have to face the consequences. But beyond that, I feel stronger than ever. This relationship taught me that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's being fair to yourself. I learned not to confuse love with obligation, and I understood that helping is valid only when the other person is also doing their part. What I went through with Elena and Julian was a bitter but necessary experience to open my eyes. Sometimes, I think about the contrast. While I spend my days working, planning the expansion of my restaurant, they're probably spending their time looking for someone to leech off of. And although that once made me angry, today, it brings me relief. I keep moving forward. They remain stuck. The love of her life turned out to be a man who can't even pay for his own coffee, and she, instead of recognizing it, still had the nerve to ask me to support her. That's the difference between those who build and those who destroy. Today, I'm moving on with my life. My restaurant is stronger than ever, with new security measures and loyal customers who support me. And on a personal level, I'm learning to enjoy being single and independent. As for Elena and Julian, I don't know what will become of them. Maybe they'll stay together, maybe not. But what I am sure of is that they will never see another cent from me. And if I can leave one piece of advice for those reading this, it's this. Never let anyone manipulate you with love or guilt to take advantage of you. True love doesn't demand that you pay someone else's debts, nor that you sacrifice your dignity to support someone who won't lift a finger. I learned this lesson the hard way, but I'm grateful I learned it now and not later, when the cost could have been even higher. Update. As I mentioned before, I had taken legal action against Elena and Julian. The police report was filed, security at my restaurant was beefed up, and I was trying to move on with my life. Yet, there was still this lingering unease, the doubt of whether he would actually follow through on his threats. Well, that doubt was cleared up one night I will never forget. It was a Thursday, just after midnight. The restaurant was closed, but as always, a security guard was on duty. I was at home resting after a long day when my phone suddenly rang. It was the guard, his voice nervous and shaky. "Mr. Grayson, they just caught a man trying to spray paint the walls of the restaurant." I shot up from my couch. "What? Are you sure?" I asked in disbelief. "Yes, I saw him with my own eyes. He was about to deface the whole front when I caught him. I yelled at him to stop, and he ran. I immediately called the police, and they arrived in minutes. They chased him for several blocks before they got him." "Who was it?" I asked, though deep down I already knew the answer. "That Julian guy." I froze for a few seconds, torn between anger, relief, and even an ironic laugh. The man who had been threatening me for weeks had the nerve to actually go through with it, with a can of spray paint in his hand. I hung up and quickly got dressed to go to the restaurant. When I arrived, a police car was still parked out front. I spoke with the officers and confirmed the story. Julian had been caught literally red-handed with paint on his hands. He had tried to run, but didn't get far. He was captured on a nearby street, out of breath and frantic. The guard told me that when confronted, Julian was shouting incoherent things like, "This place is worthless. If he doesn't pay me, I'll destroy his business." This clearly showed his intentions. He was taken to the police station, and that same night, I had to go down to provide my full statement. There was already an ongoing case for threats and attempted extortion, and now the act of attempted vandalism was added to it. Legally, this was practically the final nail in his coffin. The next few days were stressful. My lawyer kept me updated on every step. Julian had to answer for extortion, making criminal threats, and attempted property damage. Even though the vandalism wasn't completed, the fact that he was caught in the act with the spray can, combined with the previous messages, left no room for doubt. Elena, of course, tried to contact me, not directly since she was blocked everywhere, but through mutual acquaintances. She asked me to talk, to reconsider, to drop the charges. She said Julian didn't deserve to go to jail, that he had acted out of desperation. Some of her relatives even went so far as to suggest that maybe I was overreacting, that it would be better to let it go, but I didn't back down. I had already endured infidelity, humiliation, blackmail, and threats. This was the line. It wasn't my place to forgive what was clearly a crime. On the contrary, if I let it slide, the message would be that anyone could try to intimidate me and jeopardize my livelihood without facing any consequences. The legal process was swift because the evidence was solid. Call logs, screenshots of the messages, the audio where he demanded money and threatened me, and finally, being caught in the act of attempted vandalism. Julian was convicted. The sentence wasn't very long, but it was enough for him to learn that you don't build a life by leeching off others, much less through violence. He had to serve time behind bars and would have a criminal record. As for Elena, she was never formally charged since she didn't directly carry out the threats or the vandalism. But her moral complicity was evident throughout the whole affair. I had nothing left to say to her and let it go. What struck me was her last-ditch effort to play on my emotions. One evening, I received a long message from an unknown number. It was Elena. She wrote things like, "Don't you understand what it means for a woman to be left all alone? I just wanted someone to support me, and if Julian ends up in prison, I'll fall apart with him." She ended with a plea for me to reconsider everything. I read it once, then deleted it. I didn't reply. That person was no longer a part of my life. And that's how it all ended. Today, looking back, I feel an immense sense of relief. For months, I lived in a cycle of manipulation where my generosity was used as a bargaining chip and my love was mistaken for an obligation. I thought I was helping someone who needed me, but in reality, I was just feeding the dependency of two people incapable of standing on their own feet. The restaurant is still standing, stronger than ever. In fact, the news of what happened spread among the customers, and instead of driving people away, it brought even more support. Many congratulated me for not letting myself be intimidated. Some even told me that this steadfastness was precisely why they admired my business, because it reflected my character. On a personal level, I learned that it's not all about giving. You have to know when to draw the line, otherwise you end up drained, used, and even in danger. I also realized that not everyone deserves your help, and love doesn't justify sacrificing your dignity or your principles. Julian paid the price for his own actions. Elena, well, she chose her path. I chose mine. And while this experience left scars, it also taught me an invaluable lesson. What is built with effort and sweat is defended with your head held high, without fear and without giving in to blackmail. Today, I can proudly say that I came out of this stronger. I have my restaurant, my peace, and above all, the tranquility of knowing I put an end to a story that should never have started the way it did. This is the conclusion. And believe me, there's no better feeling than looking back and knowing that I didn't give in to those who only wanted to take advantage of me. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.